Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you're new, I'm the Bloody Mama. If you're keeping up with the polls that I run on the channel, you'll notice the SAS raiding force won the next timed challenge. I get a bit indecisive and kind of struggle when I'm trying to find recipes, especially for uniforms. I thought I'd go for a pre-made paint set. What I ended up going for is the Army Painters Historical Range of the 8th Army. I'm painting the SAS. But it'll be the same kit. They were commandos in the 8th Army, but the colours work for them, and it'll work for your standard 8th Army infantry. I decided to set some limits for this paint guide. I can only use the colours that are in the box. Can it be done? Let's find out. To start off, I've primed the Mini in Chaos Black. There aren't any actual instructions on the back of this paint guide for which goes where, but I'll cover that as we go along. To start off, we'll be going with the main uniform colour, and that colour is Deep Khaki Drill. I'm not used to Army Painter paints, so you'll have to let me know in the comments. But I found these paints to be quite thin, and they did require multiple coats. 2 to 3 coats, I'd say. I was using this picture as my reference, and because of that, I'll be using a different colour for the shorts. And that would be a greatcoat green. We're going to be applying this to the shorts, as well as the socks and other areas like the canteen. But again, just remember to build up those colours in thin coats, and once you're happy, we can move on to the next step. And for me, it was all the webbing. You want to use a brush with a sharp end, just to make sure we don't get any overspill. And once the webbing's done, we're going to hit belts, pouches, as well as sock wraps. Don't forget the gunsling. Once that's all done, it's time for the last coat of paint before the overall wash, and that is tan skin. Remember to allow your paint to dry before applying another layer. I'd recommend batch painting multiple minis to give yourself enough time to allow it to dry. Now using soft tone, we're going to give the mini an overall wash. Try not to let it pool on any open spaces, we only want it pooling on the recesses. Give the mini about 30 minutes to dry, and then we're going to go back in with some highlights, as well as hit the areas that we haven't painted yet, like the weapon and the shoes. First, we're going to carry on with the highlights on the uniform. And the first highlight, we're going to use mid khaki drill. Using this paint, we're going to paint everywhere apart from the deepest recesses. I'd recommend slightly watering it down. Once that's done, we're going to use light khaki drill, and we're just going to edge highlight all the raised areas. I'd recommend also watering this down slightly. If you use greatcoat green, we're going to also highlight all the raised areas again. Now this is completely optional, but if you get the sharp end of a brush, you can also highlight the centre of all the webbing. I'd recommend doing it just as it brings a little bit of punch back to that mini. Now take some tan skin, slightly water it down, and then we're going to highlight all the open areas yet again, as well as areas like the nose, the cheeks, and the fingers. So there's a few final details to hit. I like the band around the headdress, the gun, and the shoes. So let's get to that. I'm going to base coat all those areas in dark leather. You can highlight with stone grey. And if your miniature also happens to have a beard, we're going to paint that as well. Normally when applying this kind of highlight to a weapon, I like to use a dry brush, but this time I decided to use an edge highlight. Completely up to you which way you want to do it. Feel free to add a few grey hairs onto that beard. I never got around to using Desert Olive Green. I have seen it's for helmets. I'm not too sure. It's a nice colour though. So that's the overall mini done, but I decided to also paint the base using these colours as well, because it's not technically finished. Using a heavily watered down coat of Greatcoat Green, allowing it to dry and giving it a wash of a soft tone. A heavy dry brush of deep khaki drill. Light dry brush of light khaki drill. An even lighter highlight of desert webbing. I feel like I can finally say this mini's finished. So from the base to the face, we've managed to find a paint for every single location on this mini. Would I recommend the Army Painter historical range? 100%. So with all that being said, I've been the Bloody Mummer, you've been wonderful, stay safe.